Lay a tiny newborn near the edge of a bed, and they will happily wiggle right toward the drop. Total calm, no worry at all. Put that same baby on the very same bed a few months later, and they freeze. The body tenses, and their eyes dart to you. Most of us assume babies come preloaded with a fear of heights, that sometime around 6 months, a biological clock simply ticks over, and suddenly they know that falling is bad. To test how babies sense a drop, researchers built the visual cliff. They placed a checkered pattern right under a thick sheet of clear glass and dropped that same pattern far down to the floor on the other. It looked exactly like a sheer drop, even though the glass was perfectly safe to crawl on. When they lowered the youngest babies, the ones who couldn't crawl yet, over the deep end, the infants didn't panic. Their heart rates actually slowed down. They were simply paying close attention, curious about the gap. But babies who had been crawling for a few weeks had a completely different reaction. Over that exact same glass, their hearts sped up, sounding the body's quiet alarm bell for true physical wariness. The difference between those two groups had nothing to do with age. If you test 2 identical aged babies, one who crawls early and one who hasn't started, only the experienced crawler shows that heart-racing caution. Babies who scooted around in wheeled walkers, getting an artificial head start on moving themselves, developed that exact same wariness much sooner. Caution isn't handed to a child by time, it is earned through movement. Which leaves us with a rather strange puzzle. How does pushing your knees across a flat rug teach you to respect a deadly drop? The answer lives in a mechanism called visual proprioception. When you move forward, the world streams past your eyes in a predictable flow. The floor slides beneath you, and the walls drift outward in your peripheral vision. A baby's brain learns to read this visual data to stay balanced. But at a sudden drop, there's nothing to track. The river of motion vanishes. Without that flow, their compass is confused, creating a literal wobble in perception. When you see a baby freeze at the edge of the stairs, they aren't remembering a painful fall. They're reacting to the unsettling physical sensation that the floor of their own perception has just given way. You might suspect that crawling babies simply learn to be careful because they tumbled off the couch once or twice. To test that, researchers took infants who couldn't crawl at all and placed them in tiny, powered, steerable go-karts. These babies never took a tumble. All they did was drive themselves around a flat room. Yet when brought to a ledge, their hearts raced with caution. The pure experience of visual flow, not pain, built the boundary. But here is the catch. Once a baby figures out that heights are dangerous, they don't apply that rule to everything they do. A baby who has learned to perfectly judge a risky gap while sitting or crawling will instantly march straight off that exact same edge the very week they learn to walk. When a baby adopts a new way of moving, their brain has to rewrite its map of gravity from scratch. Safety rules are tied strictly to the body's posture. A rule learned on hands and knees simply doesn't apply when they are standing on 2 feet. Independent movement serves as an engine for a cluster of new cognitive abilities that reach far beyond the living room floor. This chart compares a baby's success rate at finding a hidden toy before and after they learn to move. Before a baby can propel themselves, they find the hidden object about 14% of the time, barely better than guessing. Once they begin moving independently, that number jumps to a massive 64%. Traveling through space forces the brain to truly map it. This awareness extends to the people around them. As babies gain the independence to move away from their caregivers, they begin to monitor their reactions more frequently to judge distance and safety. This constant checking in makes them significantly faster at reading the subtle shift from a happy expression to a worried one. So when your baby takes a terrifying, fearless lunge toward the edge of the changing table, it isn't a flaw in their development. They aren't innately reckless. That boldness is just a brain standing at the starting line of a new physical skill. They are actively gathering the specific data they need to build their next safety map. Your job during these vulnerable transitions isn't to panic. It is simply to act as a gentle, temporary guardrail while their internal wiring finishes laying itself down. The messy, slow, often frustrating journey of learning to crawl or walk is ultimately the wondrous process of a mind actively building itself, one wobble at a time. If you enjoyed this look into the mechanics of your little one's brain, hit the subscribe button to uncover more hidden wonders of their development. And drop a comment below
Tell me about your own fearless explorer. Are they crawling yet? I read every single one, and I would love to hear your story.